Good evening, John Morris. We've got on the other line. John?
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us, John. I mean, obviously we've highlighted the book Jumping Prospects, but tell us what kind of work goes into it and how long it's been running for.
Well, the book's been running now for 23 years, and the work that goes into it basically starts at the end of July each year when I decide where I'm going to go on the stable tour. And I have a lot of trainers that I go to each year, and I always try to put some new trainers in. And this involves around about 2,000 road miles of a journey around the British training establishments. And at the end of it all, I spend another 2 weeks writing up the interviews that I conducted with the trainers and turning into Jumping Prospects, which has been a very successful book over the past 23 years.
No, you said it takes about 6 weeks to research, and you're up until the middle hours of the night, up to 2 or 3 o'clock every night, getting it all done. Where can people pick one of these books up from, John?
The best thing to do is have a look at the website. It's jumpingprospects.co.uk, and all the information about myself, the book, and everything that I do, and some things that people have said about me, some kind things, on the website are there for everyone to see. So it's jumpingprospects.co.uk. Have a look at it, see what you think, and then you can listen to what I've got to say tonight.
And in terms of winners last season, you had a good number.
Yes, the book produced overall 242 winners, but the interesting stat came early in the season. The book was published on the 19th of September, and by the 30th of November, from 342 runners, there were 100 winners. Now, that's quite a quick time for me to get that particular landmark on the board. It's usually mid-December when I can manage that, but for some reason, even though the weather was bad last season, the book did produce 100 winners, and some of them were very good prices. And the interesting stat, really, is that 76 of those 100 winners won first time out. And this season's book's got off to a great start as well, with 4 winners in the past 8 to 9 days.
You've got a better strike rate than me, John. On a serious note, we've asked you to come up with... We've had 10 to follow on the show, but what we wanted tonight was some of those horses, dark horses that we may not have seen for some while, maybe new to the jumping and fencing next season, that you've obviously kept your eye on by speaking to all various trainers. So I'm going to start with one trained by Rebecca Curtis and Cloudbrook. Explain why we should be looking out for this one, John.
Well, he won a bumper by 10 lengths at Bangor last October, and he really did look the part in the paddock. I was there that day. And then he was a little bit disappointing on his next outing at Cheltenham, but there was a reason for that. He sustained an injury unknown to the trainer at the time, and then they ran him next time, only a few weeks later, at Foss Lass, and he bounced back into form and banged in a good performance. And then he went, and the injury he picked up resurfaced again, and they decided, because he's got such potential, the trainer and the connections decided to put him away for the rest of the season and bring him back this time over hurdles, and hopefully he'll produce the form again. He is a special horse. When I was with... one of the things when I'm on this stable tour, I don't do telephone interviews. I actually go to the yards, and this enables me to sit opposite the trainers and virtually interrogate them. And believe me, they do enjoy my sort of interview technique. And we have a good time, and I usually get the information out of them that are required to put into the book. But I can tell you, Rebecca Curtis is very, very sweet on Cloudbrook, and it was one of her favourite horses in the yard when I spoke to her back in August.
OK, well, we've got Harry Fry coming up a little bit later. I was going to ask him about one of the horses that you've outlined here. Won a couple of bumpers. Which one is that under the stewardship of Harry Fry that you want to tell us about?
Puzzle is the Harry Fry horse. Originally, they had her down to run over hurdles, but they decided to run her in a bumper, and she went on to win impressively in an outing at Bangor to start with, and then a listed race at Huntingdon. And I'd go as far to say this was one of the best performances I saw from a mare last season. And unfortunately, again, they decided that she'd done enough and didn't run her again after this. She does need soft ground, but the form of her bumpers is absolutely solid. And I would say that she will probably reappear in November at the Paddy Power meeting. That's what Harry told me. That's the plan anyhow. And then we'll see where she goes from there. But I'm looking forward to this mare over hurdles, because she's a big, strong, strapping mare. you might well have seen, many of your listeners here tonight might well have seen a winner hunted in, and she absolutely annihilated her rivals, I felt, and she was really impressive on the ground as well. But I do think that a little bit of cut in the ground certainly suits her, and she can act on heavy.
Is it fair to say, John, 2.5 miles probably be the trip to start with?
Yeah, 2.5 to start with, and then step her up to 3 miles eventually. I think there's a big race in this horse and this mare as the season progresses.
OK. Warren Greatrix has got one in Maida Fu. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Winner of a bumper, 10 lengths bumper. Your views for next season?
Yeah, another one that's... Di Walters has since purchased this horse, incidentally, as well. Won by 10 lengths, and I know Warren is very sweet on this horse. Warren's got a great setup. The first time I put him in the book, I'd known Warren for a while because of his previous employment in other yards like Oliver Sherwood, and he's built the yard up, and he had 13 winners the first time I put him in. Last season he had 43 winners, so he's definitely progressing. He's got 80 horses this season in the yard ready to go, and hopefully have a great season. But this Maida Fu really impressed me at Wetherby. I thought that it just showed its professionalism, and considering that was its debut, it was so good and just skated away from its rivals. One to look out for over hurdles, and it shouldn't have any problem winning a novice.
Now the next one, obviously Nicky Henderson has a number of horses, and I noticed how much he actually paid for this horse, £100,000. Peggy Do, that's one to watch out for.
Yeah, a former mare in point-to-point in Ireland. Very impressive between the flagsmen, winning on 2 of her 5 outings last season. She had a bit of experience to start with, and then won at Lis Renard over 3 miles on good yielding ground, and won it easily by 10 lengths. And then next outing at, I think it was Fairy House, and a point-to-point course, on their point-to-point course, she won a mare's winners race very impressively by 6 lengths, quick and clear in the closing stages. She's the highest rated Irish point-to-point mare of last season. They can run it in hurdle races, or they could run it over fences. They haven't made a decision which way they're going to go yet, but I'm hoping to see her make giant strides during the winter.
Now, Charlie Longston's off to a cracking start already. I mean, he said to me when we interviewed him last week, I don't worry, I'm not going to have such a great October, November as last year, but he didn't fail to tell me he's going to have a great September. You've got a horse there which is related to High Chaparral in No Manolito.
Yeah, No Manolito. I almost missed this in the interview, and I got my wrist slapped because it ran at the beginning of May, and I, for some reason, just managed to miss it off the list and gave Charlie a bit of a laugh, really, because he said, I got you now, look what happened, you've missed that one out. And I must admit, it was during a period when I wasn't actually watching the race myself, because I was doing other things, trying to tidy everything up for the season. But No Manolito won a race at Fontwell, and it beat an odds-on favourite trained by Gary Moore that they really did fancy that day. I think it was called Pisco Tupars. And then it's very highly thought of by his trainer. He'll probably start in the listed bumper at Cheltenham in the autumn, and hopefully he will progress. But during the racecourse performance, his debut, what I noticed about him was he was held up in the early stages, travelled really well, if a little bit green during the first couple of furlongs, and then he was covered up again behind the leaders going down on the far side, and Johnson, who rode him, Richard Johnson, just brought him to a challenging position on the home turn, pressed the button, and away this horse went. Now, that wasn't a bad bumper, because there are a few horses that are featured in the book ran in that one, and I think that this horse could be a little bit special. So No Manolito definitely wants to keep an eye on. Trained by Charlie Longston.
To be fair, I backed this horse first time out. I was at Fontwell with the man sitting next to me, Billy.
Oh, yes,
I said I'm going to have a bet on the National Hunt Flat Race in the last, and I betted on 2, and this was the one, No Manolito. Which one? I think it was about 15-2.
You did.
Billy, any questions for John?
Yeah, John, you've been doing this for quite a long time by the sound of it. So when you go and see some of the trainers that you obviously know quite well, do you must get a good feel for what type of character they are when they're particularly excited about a horse, or whether they're sort of naturally enthusiastic. Do you sort of go there, you obviously got a good grasp of the form book as well, do you go there with horses that you want to talk to them about, or do you go sort of with an open mind and they sort of talk to you about which ones you're going to follow?
Well, normally I'll go with a list, and then I'll run through my list, and obviously they have new stock coming in during the summer, so by the time it gets down to August, all the new horses are virtually in or are about to come in. So I'll run through my list. They will talk about them, and then we'll have a gab about anything that's coming in new. Regard to knowing what the trainer's like, there are indications given. I can tell by body language. This is why I absolutely love doing face-to-face stable interviews, because you get to see the white of their eyes, and they can't kid you. On a telephone, they could tell you the sky was pink. I'm on the gallops with them. I'm in the office with them discussing the horses, and I can ask questions. Sometimes that can be a little bit awkward, and I don't think they're playing the game that I want them to play, then I can always put my knee on the throat and try and get the information out of them that I want to hear about. But usually it's good humour. Some of the things that go on the stable tour, there have been so many laps, it's unbelievable what goes on. It's over those 23 years, money cannot buy that annual experience that I go through during those couple of weeks when I'm on the road.
You probably won't remember, John, we've just only got a couple of minutes. You probably won't remember. It says here that obviously you've been going for 23 years. Do you remember who your first interview was with?
Good question, that. You've caught me on the hop a little bit now. I tell you, it might well have been down in Dorset with Bob Buckler, one of the first that I went to see, because I was working down and then came back up again towards Lambourne. But he was one of the first trainers. Well, I'll tell you, one of the first trainers that I arranged the interview with from a telephone box in Lambourne, because I couldn't get hold of him, was Noel Chance.
Oh, right, okay.
I know. I actually had Mr. Mulligan on the front cover of what must have been my third book, something like that, when he won. And the Son of Lions, he'd won the Son of Lions, that was it, and I'd said he'd go for the Gold Cup. But I actually walked into this yard, and Mr. Mulligan was originally trained by Kim Bailey for a couple of races. And then Noel picked him up, and he was in this box, walked in the box, I think it might have been Folly House, where Jamie Snowden's situated now. And the box was quite big, and this horse was stood there. And a big chestnut, he just gave me the evil eye, you know. He just looked around as much to say, what are you doing, what do you want? And I thought, I knew this horse from somewhere. And then Noel said, this is Mr. Mulligan, he's a bit of a tool. And believe me, he was right, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. And it was a massive horse as well, if I remember rightly. John, thanks very much for sharing that with us. And if there's any other one, just before you go, other one that you was going to put in the six?
Yeah, one more which is interesting. You may recall Pearl Swan falling at Cheltenham in the Triumph Hurdle, and also being disqualified at Cheltenham and scrapping it out up the hill with Grumetti. This is coming back this year. Paul Nicholls has got him, and I can't wait for this horse to come back, because I think he's got something to prove at Cheltenham.
Okay.
And hopefully he'll run a couple of big races when he does return.